So in today's video, I'm going to discuss how to select a board for your child, or in case you are a young person, this may be of benefit to you also. And I will limit my discussion to 3 boards, which are the Cbse, ICSE and the state boards. So essentially, when people first select a school for their child, it's primarily based on the distance from the home and such factors, and this is the way it should be, because at that point the child is very small and therefore some of these issues are more important. But when you are going for grade 1 or class 1 and you are continuing on the way to class 10, at that point you need to decide which is the best board, and here some of this information may be useful. Now beyond class 10, there is a separate set of metrics which become important as to what is the best board for the class 12 examination, because at that point you are making a decision in terms of career, profession and possible competitive examinations. But let's look at the class 1 to 10 situation first, because this lays the groundwork for later success and choices in terms of career in life. So I will first start with the Cbse board. Now essentially the Cbse board was created by the central government, and this board was largely created to facilitate the children of people working in the public sector, in the government, as well as in the armed forces. And essentially these people had transferable jobs, and therefore they would move around the country. And these schools, often known as Kendriya Vidyalayas or KVs in short, would provide a common school system for their children. And essentially the way this board came up was that it was a very functional board. The syllabuses are very concise and compact, and essentially it presumes that you use English as a functional language primarily to do official paperwork, and the second language is Hindi, because that is the kind of lingua franca of the central government in the country. Now after some time, this further expanded from the KV system to more schools such as Delhi Public School, National Public School and so on, and now there are a plethora of schools which essentially follow the Cbse board. Now because of its basis in the public sector, which was largely technology driven, Cbse is also more technology intense in the sense that it gives more focus to math and science, and I would say somewhat less of a focus to humanities and social sciences, though that may be changing in recent years. Now the English taught in this board is at a normal level, which is largely functional and meant to communicate at a very basic level, and so there is no effort made to make a person an expert in the English language or to develop a proclivity or fascination for the English language and encourage a lot of literature. So especially literature reading is not given too much emphasis, and most of the literary works in the Cbse boards are reasonable pieces of work. They are not very difficult, and they are certainly not a lot of books in terms of poetry and Shakespeare and so on. Now the other thing is that Cbse has more of a theoretical focus. It is less practical, and I would say that there is a surge in class 9 and 10 in the Cbse board. So typically from class 1 to 8, it's a relatively peaceful journey, and then there is a sudden surge and many students are caught off guard by this surge. Now let's look at the ICSE board. The ICSE board essentially comes from the different background. So it comes from the background of the community of people of joint British and Indian descent who had English as their primary language. And after 1947, this board was formed, and essentially one of its key points is that English is the focus here and all the subjects are taught in the English language. Now there is of course an option of a second language. You can always take Hindi or Bengali or Tamil, as the case may be, and this board was popular with the convent schools, which are the missionary schools in the country, and later many secular schools also took up this board because it was somewhat English focused board, and there was a lot of incentive for people to take this kind of board. Now Cbse has a slightly more focused syllabus. Here in ICSE there is a more expansive syllabus. There is a focus on both theory and practice, so there is a lot of practical importance here, and also there is some focus on English, especially in terms of literature. So you are likely to encounter books such as Merchant of Venice in class 9 and 10, and you are expected to do somewhat comprehensive literary interpretations of poems as well as literature. Now this may help you down the road if you are pursuing a path of book writing or paper writing, and if you are looking for a career where English is going to be an important aspect of your future life. Now here I would say there is a more graded increase from 6, 7, 8 to 9 and 10. So the sudden increase which is there in Cbse in terms of the level of difficulty is somewhat mitigated in this board. Now beside these two central boards, there are all the state boards. Now state boards are essentially created and run by the state governments, and state governments are responsible for literacy of the state. So this is a huge responsibility which they carry, and essentially the aim of the state board is to spread education and literacy across the entire country. Now because the target student population here is extremely diverse in terms of their social and economic background, the state boards try to address the people at large, and therefore they typically focus on the local language of the state and also focus on the basics in each of the subjects. So I would say that the state boards take a more easier path, at least till class 8. There is a slight ramp up in 9 and 12 and then beyond. Now local language plays a huge importance in the state boards, and this is because most of the states are constituted linguistically, and therefore there is a lot of pride in terms of not only the local language but also the local history, the iconography, the different monuments and so on. So these are given a lot of importance in the state boards, and there may be an intense study of the local language literature. So again, if somebody is very grounded in a particular state and plans to stay in this state for all his life, and also thinks that his children will be in the state, then I think the state boards are very appropriate for such people, because a lot of the transactions and business in the state is communicated in the local language. Whereas if you look at in the ICSE board, which is more English language focused, that is sometimes useful for people who are planning to go out of the country or work on occupations which largely require dealing with global people who may be interested in communicating in the English language. For example, if we take the case of journals and books, people may be in different countries such as Russia, Germany, France, Japan, China, but when it comes to writing their technical communication, they all turn to the English language to do that. So again, that is something to keep in mind. Now, many states have engineering colleges and medical colleges for which they have some entrance examinations. So these entrance examinations are kind of linked to the state boards, whereas the Cbse is more directly linked to examinations such as the JEE, NEET and so on. So again, if you are looking at any exam for a central government institution, then Cbse is the appropriate board. If you are looking at state government institution, then state boards will be more appropriate for you. Now, between the different states in the country, there is a huge divergence in terms of the difficulty level of the state boards as well as the marks given by the board. So this is something to keep in mind, that marks across the states are hard to compare. Now, as far as English level is concerned, it varies according to the state board. Some of the southern boards may have a higher standard than northern boards and so on. And again, here the aim of teaching English is as a language, and most of the actual instruction may be given in the local language because that's what the population at large is most familiar with, and it would be difficult to load them with a language which is still considered a foreign language by many, and therefore the local language may be the best medium. Also remember that many people may have parents who have not gone to schools and who are not literate, so it's very difficult to really load these people with a lot of content. Now, as far as English language is concerned, it is taught as a separate subject and mostly in the higher grades. And here the aim is to have a basic level of functionality in the English language in terms of reading, writing, looking at basic documents and so on, and some level of verbal communication, especially in the southern states because of the presence of a large number of people from different states. There is a general tendency for people to speak in the English language. Now, these points give you some basic idea about how to select a school for your child, and there are certain more aspects which you should keep in mind. One is that schools can make a huge difference. So it's possible that a school which follows the state board or the Cbse board has very good teachers in terms of English speaking and diction if it's located in a large city, and here the actual level of mastery of English of the student may be more than a convent based ICSE system which is situated in a small town somewhere far away. So that is something to keep in mind. Similarly, teachers can make a huge difference as far as students are concerned. So sometimes teachers are exceptional and they can make a huge difference. Now also you can turn to various tutors and online content to help you to improve the areas where the student is weak. Now, one of the advantages of the typical NCERT or Cbse system is that there are prescribed books for all the classes, and these are there at very low cost and also in the particular web pages for NCERT. For ICSE there is a syllabus but no books are prescribed. So there is a set of books which are out there published by different publishers, and these books tend to be quite detailed with numerous solved examples and questions, and again become somewhat like tomes and so are somewhat scary to many of the students. Finally, I would say that as far as English language is concerned, parents can help a lot by introducing their child to various books and literature as well as non-fiction, whatever the board may be. And the school actually covers only a small amount of material in this area. So even if you are in a Cbse board or especially in a state board, if you personally coach the child or employ tutors to coach them in the English language, then they can be helped by this particular situation. So these were some of my insight as far as the ICSE, Cbse and state boards are concerned, and as I mentioned, each has its advantages, disadvantages, as well as its primary targeted set of students, and therefore you need to keep in mind what is the aim your child is likely to have in the long run, because it's kind of difficult to switch between boards once you have put in a lot of years in a particular board, because each board has a certain style, and therefore once the style grows on a student and the parent, they find it somewhat difficult to suddenly change the board, especially after class 6, because in this situation there is something like a culture shock which the student has to go through. Now, one of the things which many people do is take a relook at this particular concept after class 10 and then try to go to a different board for the next 2 classes. And this is particularly useful if the child has developed a certain proclivity toward a field. Maybe he has decided to go out of the country for further studies, or he has shown a great desire to give a national competitive exam such as JEE or NEET or KVPY, or he is targeting some local examinations such as in Karnataka it may be CET or something like that, and therefore the person can then go with the board which is closest to the particular examination. But this fact can be done later in life. It doesn't have to be done right at the beginning. So you can go to a certain board till class 10 and then make a switch once again. So I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned to my channel for more such videos. Thank you very much.